Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Ask a Property Manager, episode 11. Today is March 11th, 2020. I'm coming to you live from the Own Buffalo studios here in Buffalo, New York. I'm Andrew Schultz, principal broker of Own Buffalo, Inc. And on today's show, we're going to be discussing some of my key takeaways from the recent PMMCon out in Las Vegas. Before we jump into that, of course, I have to plug social media. If you're watching this live, you're probably watching on Facebook. Facebook.com/Buffalo Foreclosed Homes. You can also catch our replays there, as well as on YouTube. If you aren't subscribed to us on YouTube already, please head over to ownbuffalo.com, click on the link to our YouTube page, and hit subscribe. We're trying to get to that magic 100 subscriber mark so that we can claim our custom URL over there. While you're on ownbuffalo.com, feel free to grab a free 30-minute phone consultation with me. That link's available on ownbuffalo.com. You don't have to be in the Buffalo market to take advantage of that. I will try to answer any kind of real estate or property management related question that I can. Just keep in mind that I may not know the specific laws, rules, and regulations of your area. So we just try to give us the best general advice we can there. So let's jump right into it. Got a lot of information that I want to try to cover today. I recently attended PMMCon out in Las Vegas. This was last week. It was a three-day intensive conference is probably the best way to describe it, geared toward helping property managers and property management companies improve their operations and grow. And it was just a fantastic conference from top to bottom. It was well put together, a ton of great content, a lot of great people, some great vendors. It was a really worthwhile event to attend. And the point of today's episode is to kind of discuss what I picked up along the way through various sessions, as well as doing a little bit of SWOT analysis, talking to different vendors, and networking with other people who were in attendance there at the event. Really good event, all red meat, no fluff, very much worth it. So we'll jump into it here. The first session on day one was a session on KPIs, key performance indicators, and that was given by Mike Nelson. If you're not familiar with what a KPI is, it's basically a data point or a series of data points that you can use to measure how well your business is operating. It doesn't even need to be business. You'd have key performance indicators for yourself. People track things like their weight, their mood, temperature, whatever. KPI is just a data point that, when combined with other data points, is going to give you an indication as to how things are going, good or bad. So why are they so important? Well, it helps to increase your efficiency, first of all, when you know what it is that you're looking for and what your targets are. It'll help you to increase your efficiency just by knowing what direction you're supposed to be pointed in. It also makes it easier to see a small problem starting to develop before it becomes a big problem. And hopefully you can kind of head it off at the pass before it turns into a real situation for you or your organization. This tends to lead to an increase in revenue, and it gives you, again, just a better overall indication of the health of your organization. So the presentation was, I believe this was a 3-hour long morning presentation. It was an in-depth look at key performance indicators in the property management space, and what to track and why to track it, and what matters to you internally as a company versus what matters to your client base and things like that. And I'm not going to sit and go through all of the different KPIs that we discussed in the session. The guy literally Mike handed us a pamphlet, not even a pamphlet, it was a booklet with probably 200 different KPIs that you can track inside of your business. Most people are never going to need data that granular to run their operation. But when you're going in from a situation where you're tracking maybe a couple of KPIs to a situation where, okay, now I understand that by tracking this information, it's going to help me to better my business, it really kind of helps you to put things in focus a little bit. So one of the implementations that we're going to be looking at now that we're back from the conference is what KPIs truly matter to us based on our current business cycle, so to speak, where we're at, what concerns we have, where do we need to be improving, so we can start monitoring at least those KPIs and work on improving towards some of our goals to help our company grow. And that's going to be huge for us. It's very difficult to know how you're doing unless you have something to measure against. And that's kind of what the KPI gives us reference to, is if we're improving or not improving. Are we trending up, trending down in any given category? You can find a ton of information about KPIs online if that's what you're looking for. And I would highly recommend that if you're a small business owner and you're not tracking KPIs, or you're not tracking enough KPIs, or you feel like you're kind of lost in your business, there might be something that you're missing there that you can add on fairly easily without causing a ton of disruption to your business. After we got done talking about KPIs, there was a focus on SWOT analysis, and that was done in the large presentation was given by Scott Brady, and then we were broken out into smaller groups, and our smaller group was led by Sarah Durbin. So what is a SWOT analysis? It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I hadn't done a SWOT analysis since college. It was done in a group that I was involved in college. Someone inside the group helped us run a SWOT analysis on our organization there to figure out, again, what were our strengths, what were our weaknesses, where are there opportunities that we should be taking advantage of, and what are the threats, both internal and external, to our organization. I hadn't done one of these since college. And I had the chance to sit down and listen to Scott's presentation. And then when we broke out into the small groups with Sarah, it was just an improvement on that. Essentially, what they did was taught you how to do a SWOT analysis, how to look at your organization from kind of the 30,000 foot view, figure out, and you had to really be honest with yourself. You had to really think about, where are we excelling? Where are we doing poorly? Where are our opportunities to advance? And what are things that we need to be paying attention or protecting ourselves against? So we actually broke this down into 2 different days. So after Scott's presentation on day 1, we were put into our small groups for the first time. The nice thing about the small groups is that everybody who was in the group was essentially right around the same size of property management firm, which was great because you were talking to people who were experiencing some of the same issues that you were experiencing, which is good because some people have different perspectives. Everybody has different perspectives. And it might help you to unlock something that they're doing it. They've already figured out how to make this work, but you're still struggling with it in your business. It was a great opportunity for networking in that instance. So day 1 of the SWOT analysis in the small groups was more geared toward helping you discover what you needed to improve, like areas that you may have been lacking in, or things that you wanted to try to pick up while you were at the conference. And again, this is my analysis of it. Other people will probably get very different takeaways from different sessions. And actually, I guarantee that as we get into the later ones, that other people have very different takeaways than what I did. So, after doing the analysis on day 1, I had a little bit of a vision as to, okay, this is an area where I'm really struggling in my business. Who do I need to connect with while I'm here? I'm literally in a room with, I'm not sure how many people were at the conference. I would say probably 150 to 200 of my peers, some of whom have already experienced this, some of whom have already solved this problem. Who do I need to talk to kind of unlock the key, to unlock the door to that next level, if you will? And that includes, vendors as well. Sometimes you do need a piece of software or something along those lines to help you improve a little bit. Stay organized, track a process, build a process, whatever the case may be. And that's what the vendors are there for. So it's a good opportunity to, talk to them, start getting a feel for whether their product might work for you to help you solve your need, et cetera, et cetera. So on day 3 of the conference, which was the final day of the conference, we were put back into our SWOT groups, and it was another open discussion, I would say, about the things that we picked up that would help us to move forward, different vendors and things like that would be helping along the way. Very good discussion. I would say that the SWOT presentation, as well as the SWOT small groups, again, probably one of the strongest presentations in the entire conference. And guys, keep in mind, I'm only touching on, I think, 4 of the sessions out of the 8 sessions, or out of the 3 days that I was at this conference. And it was 8 hours each day. I'm essentially trying to compress 24 hours worth of learning down into like 24 minutes of Ask a Property Manager. So I'm not going to hit everybody's sessions or anything like that. just don't have the time for that, unfortunately. Next session that I wanted to touch on was with regards to maintenance operations. And I'm probably gonna butcher this guy's last name, and I apologize in advance. But this presentation was given by Mike Schrepfer, 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 I think is how that's pronounced. Probably butchering that. Very good presentation on. His presentation was more geared toward bringing a maintenance operation in-house and how to have a successful in-house maintenance operation. What parts should you keep in-house? What parts should you subcontract? Things along those lines. Really in-depth look at his maintenance operation, and they manage about 450 doors. So he was talking about what a maintenance operation looks like for a management operation of that size. Gave a real in-depth dive into their operation, including both the maintenance service business work, which is what we would consider like small jobs, work orders, things like that, as well as into their contracting operation, or what we would consider to be like estimate-driven, larger jobs, things like that. And then there was a frank discussion on why most maintenance companies fail, and we see this all the time. Vendors that we have for, maybe a year or so will suddenly go out of business, or just disappear, or it's tough to succeed in a maintenance business. And one of the main reasons that it's such a tough business to succeed in is because most people don't understand that there's more to it than just being on the tools. So going back to the KPIs, there's a lot of different KPIs in a maintenance business that can't be ignored if you want to continue to operate. And being on the tools is great. It means you're getting work done. It means you're bringing revenue in the door, hopefully. But there's a lot of back-end stuff to that needs to be thought about and taken care of as well, which is where a lot of small vendors have a tendency to really gum up the works. The discussion, there was a good discussion on costs and margins, as well as labor rates and markups and things like that. And then there was one slide in particular that really struck me, and I wish I would have screen grabbed it and put it on here, but it was 4 key off-tool components. When I say off-tool, I mean not actually doing the physical job. 4 key off-tool components to a contracting operation, which is the estimating process, scheduling, communicating, and accounting. And when that slide popped up and I was looking at it, I realized we have some holes here in our process. And that's not necessarily, it is a bad thing. Like, having a hole in a process is never a great situation to be in. But knowing that I have those holes and recognizing that I have those holes means that I now know that it's something that needs to be addressed and fixed, which is great. So it's, definitely a learning process as we go along. I won't get into the intimacies of what our holes are and what we're doing to fix them and things like that, just in the interest of time. But it is, it was very worthwhile to discover, off tools. There are some things that when you're not doing those, it really has a deep impact on everything that's happening on tools. So I think that's all I had to say about Mike. Oh, actually, no, there was a little more I wanted to talk about. There was some discussion on limiting risk in a contracting business, things like ensuring that you have all of the proper subcontractors that you need if you're subbing any work out. For instance, most people don't do in-house electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. Most often, those are all specialty licenses in New York State. Most of those are going to be subcontract vendors with the appropriate licenses and stuff like that. So you're going to have to make sure that they have the appropriate insurances, their workers' compensation, their general liability, and so on and so forth. And also in tune with limiting risk was discussion on properly pricing your work. It's amazing how much less risk there is when you are properly pricing your work and don't feel like you need to cut corners or do a substandard job in order to try to turn a profit. Pricing yourself appropriately and taking on only appropriately priced work will put you ahead so much further, and it limits your risk because now you don't feel like you need to try to cut a corner to save a dime to be profitable on a job. A lot of discussion on limiting risk. Proper insurances, subcontractors, correctly priced estimates, things like that, all go a long way to limiting your risk in a maintenance operation. And the final point I wanted to touch on with regards to maintenance was accounting. Mike has a really good process called WIP accounting, work in progress accounting, that breaks out, okay, I might receive a large chunk of a job at the beginning of the job, and then I might not see anything else until the middle of the job. How does that break out in terms of what is our labor cost, what is our material cost on a week-by-week basis until we get to that next draw? It's called a excuse me, I can't talk today. Work in progress accounting process. So it's pretty cool. I'm hoping I get in touch with Mike so he could send me over a couple of those spreadsheets that he has. Those are pretty instrumental in showing how to do the WIP accounting process. He also had a great scheduling one as well. So looking forward to touching base with him here after and hopefully getting a hold of those spreadsheets and moving forward. And then the last actual session that I wanted to touch on was actually probably I'm going to say my second favorite of the entire conference, and that was Extreme Ownership. If you haven't read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, I would recommend reading that book. I'd highly recommend reading that book. I was actually reading it on the flight to and from Las Vegas. Very good book. But this entire session was led by somebody from Echelon Front, which is Jocko's company. If you're not familiar, Jocko Willink was a Navy SEAL and was responsible for a lot of operations overseas in Iraq and things of that nature. The book basically talks about the what's the best way to put it? The mental processes and things like that they use to stay sharp, how they plan, how they execute, how they cover one another, things of that nature. Go read the book. I'm not doing it justice. I'm doing a very, very poor interpretation of the book. Go read the book. That's actually not what I'm here to discuss. I'm looking to discuss inside of that session. There was a group activity that was pretty interesting. I won't, because it is their group activity, so I won't reveal everything. But basically, they give you a set of rules, and I think there were 8 rules on the list. And you would read the rules and interpret the rules, and then you had a group of people at your table, and based on that set of rules, you had to develop a process. So in this instance it was a rubber ball, and the ball had to move around the table in such a fashion that you couldn't pass it to the person next to you. It had to pass through everyone's hands, this, that, the other thing. And it was about building a process. And then once the process was built, you had to demonstrate to the instructor, okay, we've developed the process. And then the next component was, okay, now bring your process down to under a certain time limit. And we didn't have too much difficulty in doing that. We had to modify our process a little bit to get it under that time frame, but it was still pretty close. And then the third thing that they added was that you had to bring it down to an even tighter time frame. I believe it was under 5 seconds. And initially everybody was like, oh wow, like this is crazy how we're going to get it down to that. And we sat there and we were looking at the rules, and we realized that we had kind of self-imposed some rules or misinterpreted some rules that were written or not written, and had kind of limited ourselves. And once we went back and kind of reinterpreted the rules, we realized that we were able to create that process and make it much more efficient. And obviously the point of the exercise was team building and leadership development, and these persons were more active in developing the process. They were the go-getters. These people had a tendency to lean back and kind of examine and maybe interject as necessary, things of those natures. I took something completely different in addition to the standard lessons that everybody was picking up on teamwork and on extreme ownership and things of those natures. One thing I picked up was on process iteration, and I don't know if how many other people had picked up on this. We started with a process that was okay but sloppy at best. It got the job done. It wasn't the cleanest process, but it was a process that got the job done. It was time-consuming. It involved a lot of hands on deck. Everybody had to play a key part to it. Then when the second iteration of the project came through, we realized, okay, our first iteration doesn't work quite as well as we want it to. How can we change this to streamline it a little bit and make the process that much better? And when we did that, that was kind of iteration number 2, and our time dropped drastically because we had improved the process. We'd made things a little bit more streamlined. And then again, on iteration 3 of the project, the process, that's when we really like knocked it out of the ballpark. And actually, really all the groups did. It was amazing to see how quickly people were able to take this instruction set, break it down, build a process, iterate a process, iterate a process. When everybody had put their minds to it, it's amazing how quick that process goes. From my perspective, one of the things that I thought was key and interesting was that iteration process. And how you might have a process somewhere in your organization that, yeah, it's sloppy, it's slow, but it works and it's been tried and true. Well, that process is probably costing you more than you realize, either in time or in aggravation, either for you or for a client or for a tenant, something along those lines. Sometimes these older processes, yeah, it's worked well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, does not always apply, especially in an industry that's ever changing the way that property management is. So in conclusion, go read Extreme Ownership. It'll have nothing to do with process iteration like what I'm talking about, but you will gain some valuable insight out of that book. Definitely pick that up. And then after you finish Extreme Ownership, the second book in that series is Dichotomy of Leadership, which I'm actually in the process of reading now. Talk a little bit here about the information that was garnered outside of the networking sessions, outside of the classroom sessions. And the first thing, as always, is networking. I talked about this after I got back from Atlanta. I'm going to talk about it again now. The networking that you get outside of the classroom or even inside the classroom is worth its weight in gold. There were, in the small group that we were in for our SWOT analysis, there were probably 5 or 6 of us who have decided that we're going to start talking on a more regular basis, either bi-monthly, monthly, something like that, just to continue to bounce ideas off of one another and help each other grow and help keep each other accountable, which is a big thing. That never would have happened if I hadn't been at the event and been speaking with these people. That happened to happen inside of a session, but outside of the session, there was a ton of networking. Grabbing lunch with people who you haven't seen in a year. I took a couple of other meetings while I was out there with clients as well. Tons of networking opportunity at a conference like this. You don't have to go to a conference out of the area to experience this. You probably have a Real Estate Investors Association meetup right in your own backyard that you can go to and join and contribute and learn and things like that as well. But if you do have an opportunity to travel a little bit, sometimes the knowledge that you need is not available in the marketplace you're at. Like Buffalo, we have some great managers here in Buffalo. We also have some really bad managers here in Buffalo. But what we don't have a ton of is good quality property management education. So being able to go and seek that education outside of our region is nice because it gives me a little bit more well-developed mindset, because this information is coming from all over the country, really all over the world. We had some people from Australia who presented at this conference as well. So you're getting a little bit more rounded perspective rather than, well, this is what works in my market. You can actually talk to people and find out what works in their markets as well. Outside of the networking, some other key factors that were being discussed, big topics, current and upcoming legislation. Everybody is watching current and upcoming legislation very carefully to see how it's going to have an impact on our business, both from the real estate and from the rental standpoint, but as well as larger economic factors that could have a major impact on housing sales. For instance, if you're in a real estate market where things are a little bit hot, you might be losing clients because they realize they can sell and get their cash back out of the property. If you're in an area where sales are starting to slow down, you might be starting to see more people renting properties out if they can't get the cash back out of their homes and things like that. So there are always economic factors that could have an impact on our business. What else do we talk about outside of sessions? I think there's probably the major things. What I would say would be, like upcoming legislation, talking about process, talking about, industry concerns and things of that nature. As always, it was great to see some old friends, meet some new friends, and I'm already looking forward to the next conference. It's always such a blast to get out and see people that you haven't seen in a while. So that pretty much is going to wrap us up here for today. We'll plug our social again here real quick. I do appreciate you guys for watching. We love producing Ask a Property Manager, and it's always great if you can help us improve. Drop a comment or question either on Facebook or YouTube. Your question might end up being answered in an upcoming episode. You can also grab the 30-minute phone consultation if you're a little bit shy, or if you just need to, a private discussion, you don't want it to be broadcast to the world. Feel free to grab a free 30-minute phone consultation over at ownbuffalo.com. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/buffalo4closedhomes. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube. Grab that link over at ownbuffalo.com as well. If you enjoyed this content, if I brought some value to your day, please throw us a like. It helps other people like you see us, and that also helps us improve in the algorithms to reach more people as well. Next week on March 18th, 10 a.m. Eastern, our topic of discussion will be security deposits. Looking forward to that one. Should be a good time. Until then, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to drop that comment, leave us a like, and we will be with you again next week.